Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to Unquestionable with Calvin Smith. Just before we get into the interview for today, I just wanted to preface everybody with saying that this interview got a tad bit awkward at times, being completely honest. Now, I will be going more in depth about my thoughts on the interview at the end of the episode, so make sure to stick around after the actual interview ends to hear what my final thoughts on the entire interview and on Ted Mahr's claims are. But I say that it got a tad bit awkward because, needless to say, I felt like I was dancing around some of the questions that I had for Ted. But, anyways, if you want a full breakdown of the entire interview and my thoughts on the interview, make sure to stick around until the end of the interview and listen to my final thoughts segment. With that being said, let's dive into today's interview with Ted Mahr, the psychic, time traveler, and channeler. All right, welcome back, everybody. It's Unquestionable with Calvin Smith. I'm your host, Calvin, and today I'm joined by again, very special host or special guest. I said host because right before we started recording, we had this whole shambles. We'll probably talk about that later. But anyways,
Cool.
I am joined by psychic, author, and channeler Ted Mahr. But welcome, Ted, coming on the show. I appreciate you for coming on. And yeah, what brings you on today?
Well, thanks so much, Calvin, for inviting me to here today. This is going to be fun. Well, I've been a psychic in touch with the other side for almost 30 years now,
Okay.
and I've been doing my radio show for over 9 years. I started back in November of 2013.
Yes, and that's
After,
out of this world radio. Is that right?
yeah,
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 yeah. I
yeah.
listened to a little bit of it before I had you on the show to make sure, you were pretty well spoken on there. So I was like, yeah, he sounds like a great guy to come on, talk about what
Oh.
he believes. But yeah, what do you talk about on your show?
Well, the purpose of my show is to make the world a better place, and I was directed by angels through a homeless fellow,
Mhm.
several people, back in 2013. And I was between jobs at the time, and they came to me, this fellow came to me, a homeless guy, and said, Ted, you need to start writing books and start your own radio show. And I didn't know the first thing about radio back then. And so about, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks later, 6 weeks later, the same thing happened to me in another library, actually. A fellow
Okay.
came up to me and said the same thing. And so it's a long story. I ended up meeting somebody who knew a station manager in Seattle and asked him if I could do a show. And he said, sure. I signed a contract within, I think, about 45 minutes of meeting him. And at the time, you had to pay. They didn't have podcasts like we do now.
Right, right.
Hardware station. So I did a hardware station. You had to pay, what was it, $800 per hour back then.
Wow.
And so, but I got on, and my guide said, "Don't worry about it. We'll cover it for you. You know, make it donation-based, listener-supported, nonprofit." So that's
Nice.
what we did. And I haven't looked back since, and I've been just broadcasting ever since that time.
Very
Um,
nice.
and the purpose is to help people with the ascension. And on my last show, I had over 900 million listeners in over 100 countries.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I had quite a few listeners. So it's just really exploded over the years.
That's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. And so now I broadcast on BBS radio outside of Houston, Texas, and also on Radio Soul International on Mondays in Vienna, Austria, in
Wonderful.
German and in English. So, and I was broadcasting in Japanese and some Spanish shows, but I got a little bit stretched, a bit thin. So I decided to pull back, and I'll revisit it next year. So.
Gotcha. Very cool. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that your show is doing very well. That's awesome to hear. So I guess kind of backtracking just for a second. Um, when you were talking about your story a little bit, you mentioned a homeless man, right? A homeless man, and and you also mentioned angels. So do you believe that homeless man was an angel?
Mhm. Oh yeah,
Why do you
yeah.
think that?
Well, angels appear in various forms. They can appear as a person, they can appear as a insect, they can appear like a butterfly, they
Mhm.
can appear as a bird. They can appear in lots of different shapes and forms. And what they'll do, they'll deliver a message to you, Calvin, and then they'll disappear. And this guy delivered his message and then he disappeared. So I've had that happen to me before. And um, yeah, there is a supreme being, and there's lots of different angels out there.
Okay.
If you want to read a book on the extent of the angel hierarchy, There's a book called the Urantia book, Urantia. It was published back in the 50s.
I'm gonna write that
Uh,
down.
and it's
Urantia.
about 2,000 pages long plus. And it gives an overview of the spiritual hierarchy beyond this 3D. And it's just amazing. There's all kinds of angels out there.
Okay,
Um,
interesting. So I guess while we're kind of on the angel topic, so I would assume that you're religious, right?
well,
Because we're
I'm
talking about
spiritual, but
angels.
not necessarily religious.
Okay, so do
I
you
don't.
like
I don't go to
follow
church.
any particular like Christianity, Islam, anything like
Well,
that?
I guess you could call me a Christian, but I don't. I don't really follow a particular religion.
Okay,
So I think they're just different paths to the same God.
interesting. Okay,
That's how I look at it.
okay. So you mentioned angels can change different forms into different organisms,
Right.
basically.
hmm
How how do you know that? Like how did you learn that, I guess?
I know. Well, let me tell you. I first started out talking to benevolent extraterrestrials back in 76, 77. That's another long
Okay,
story.
interesting.
And then around about November of 94, my foster mother was a master psychic. She used to find missing and lost children for the Seattle area police departments.
Okay.
And she started teaching me how to talk to the other side way back when. So I've been in touch with the other side for getting on 29 years now, almost 30. And at first, when I was first learning, you learn the difference between your heart mind and your logical mind. And your heart mind is always right. It's 2,000 times more powerful than your logical mind. And you ask me, how do I know? I just know. I just know. And they've proved it to me too so many times that now it's understandable when you first start out and you have questions and you don't know what messages you're getting from who or what, but I
Hmm.
always, what I do when I have a spiritual mentoring class, and I always teach people, Calvin, to cover themselves first in a cone of white light.
Okay.
And then for protection, and you put a series of mirrors around it facing outward to deflect any negativity. And then I ask God and my angels to protect me. And then I go into the spiritual area because there are tricksters out there, but I haven't had any problems just because I take precautions and I ask for help.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. How would you know? Okay, so how do you know that these beings that you believe are helping you aren't the ones that are actually deceiving you into doing the wrong thing?
I don't have any problem. The information they've given me has always been 100% correct.
Okay.
Never wrong.
Can you give an
Never
example?
wrong.
Maybe
Uh,
an example of something that
yeah.
they've given you that turned out to be true. Maybe like can they give you like predictions of the future? Okay, I thought so. So is there a way can you protect or I'm sorry, predict other people's futures or just your own?
I can.
Okay, you can
I think
predict
that's
other
for the
people's futures.
highest and best I can.
Are you
Mhm.
able to tell me anything about my future or past if you're able to go into the past?
Sure, we can do that in a few minutes,
Yeah,
but I'll
yeah,
give
yeah,
you
no
some
worries, no
clues
worries.
now.
So
The angels have saved my life innumerable times.
okay,
And
how
this
so?
this year and last year, I've been under attack by. It's a long story how the circumstances of this came up, but a guy named Simon Parks in England. He works for the Central Intelligence Agency, and I know all the details about his contract with them. And he and his friends have tried to eliminate me numerous times. But I've been able to protect myself with the help of my angels, and they give me warnings.
Now, I'm sorry,
Every
you say like eliminate you as in like assassinate you or
You could, yeah, I'm trying to use a cryptic term for the same meaning.
gotcha. Okay. So like a more
There are
like a
certain,
kind of spiritual kind of death type of thing
no,
or
no,
okay.
KILL kind of death.
Mm.
So, but I'm protected and I've come forward. I've got a dossier on Mr. Parks and his activities, which has been sent to over 150 different light workers around the world. And should something happen to me, that would be released to the press and public, and it would be extremely embarrassing to
Hmm.
him.
Yeah.
And blow his cover. But anyway, getting on, you're asking, how do I know? Well, I've been warned so many times that the information they've given me has always turned out to be correct. So I don't There's no reason to doubt anything. With that
Okay.
kind of track record for almost 30 years, you know, you just know.
So so like for I
These are,
guess
these are legitimate questions, by the way.
yeah,
And I
good
know
to know.
people, yeah,
I'm trying
people
to be as
think,
legitimate, I'm that's the whole point of my show, a lot of people think that I just have people on here to try to embarrass them or something. That's not at all the point of the show. Point is just me putting the questions out there that I feel like people are asking. So, I guess so. For example, I want to know as many true things as possible, right? I want to know as many true things and as few false things as possible. And if you're able to contact some sort of organism or something from another realm or reality, I definitely want to know if that's true. Um, so by you saying you just know, um, I guess how would I just know if I'm being contacted?
well, I can give you a little mini reading now if you want. We will discuss some private facts. And I guess the only issue I have is whether you want to broadcast this all over the world or keep it private.
No, I'm totally interested. I'll edit out whatever I feel like is unsafe for me, but I am totally open to whatever you're willing to read about me.
I respect people's privacy, and that's why I always
Yeah,
ask, especially on a broadcast
of
like
course.
this.
Yeah, and if there was anything bad, I would just edit out that little piece of bad information and let you know, of course. I don't edit out anything
It's,
without letting my guests know.
it's not bad, but were you close to your grandparents on your mother's side?
Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm close to my grandmother. Kind of, not really. I don't know. Um, she's doing okay. I don't know. We're a little bit close, but my grandfather has passed away. It's just my grandmother on my mom's side.
Okay, did you know your grandfather?
Not really. I met him when I was very, 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 very young. I don't remember the sound of his voice. I don't even remember his face or anything.
Okay, well, he's around you and he's one of your guardian angels. So anytime you need help with anything, put your hand in your heart and just ask them for help and direction. They'll come through. It's important. It's important when you're first learning this stuff not to have any doubts, because if you have doubts, you will stop transmissions from the spiritual world to yourself.
I
Um,
don't,
so
as
you have to
so
be
that's the
open
thing is
to it.
that I'm a skeptic, bottom line. So I mean, I'm gonna have some doubts, even though I'm open to it. I'm open to the experience and the information. I can't
Well,
help, doubting it just a little bit,
well,
so you say put my hand over my heart and
send them some lots of love and
lots
light,
of love and light.
and ask them you can ask them questions, and the thoughts are things in the higher dimensions.
Okay.
We're shifting now into the fourth and fifth dimension,
Are,
and there are 12 different dimensions to this reality. The 12th dimension is where God or the supreme being resides, and we exist in the third dimension, but we're shifting now into the fourth and then fifth dimension. Every year, it's easy to go lots of different areas, but every year I go to Mount Shasta, which is a
okay.
portal into the hollow earth. And when I've been there, when I go there, the people I bring with, if they're open to healing, they're positive about it, they will, they get a healing. And I've had this summer, for example, last summer, I had, well, one lady who had her eyesight restored in one eye, where she was completely blind. Another lady who had had Lyme's disease for 20 years, completely healed up in about 25 minutes. Another lady had two cataracts completely dissolved within a day. Two women who, one was partially deaf, both were partially deaf. One had her hearing completely restored, the other one partially restored.
So does this healing only work at Mount Shasta? And Mount Shasta's in California, right?
Right.
Right. Oh, yeah. Okay. So does it only work at Mount Shasta? Like, can it
It
people
can
be
work,
healed?
it can work, it can work anywhere, but it seems to work, it can work actually, that's a good question, Calvin. It could work where you are now, it could work where anyone is on this planet, but it seems to work the best when you're at Shasta, because there's a lot of healing portals there, a lot of ley lines going, energy centers. And what we do, I'll take my small group and we'll sit around an area in a circle, and we'll do prayers and meditation and ask the angels to come in to help us. And the patron, the patron saint of our saint, that's a Catholic term, but it's the head spiritual leader of Telos, which is a city below Mount Shasta, 125 miles, that exists in the fifth dimension. He'll come, Adam is a wonderful, wonderful man. He'll come up and help people get healings, and they work through the God within you. In 2000, when was it? I think it was 17 or 18. 17, I think. They gave me a new heart. They said my heart was. They gave me a new heart. And then the following year, I had 20/50 vision, blurry vision, in one of my eyes, and they restored my eyesight to 20/10, crystal clear vision in both eyes.
Okay.
And that's firsthand experience.
So I guess
through the God within.
My first question is, so let me get this straight. At Mount Shasta, it is a portal into the hollow earth, correct? And there's a city that's under Mount Shasta, I guess, however deep you Telos. And you said that there is a person from that city that comes up and like talks to you and people that go there with you.
Yeah. I also communicate with my Pleiadian friends as well. The Pleiades are a group of stars. They're called the Seven Sisters.
Yeah. Yep.
They're 464.24 light years from here. Many of us are from the Pleiades. They're just like us, Calvin, humans, except they're in a higher dimension, higher vibratory state. So
let me ask you this. Let's have a little bit of fun here. What are some of the people that you're able to speak to? Like from like I've read some things like I read a little bit of your book, Messages from the Masters. I haven't purchased your book yet, but it's on my wish list. And from just reading on the back of it, I saw that you're able to speak to people such as JFK, Albert Einstein, Nostradamus, Pleiadians, like we've talked about. There you go. There's the book. I do want to pick that up. Dwight Eisenhower, Nikola Tesla, so many. Journey to the Other Side. It's another book that I want to pick up there. And so, yeah, I guess, are there any other interesting characters other than them that I've listed that I guess are
Nostradamus?
Yeah. I see you do talk about him a lot in some of the previous interviews and videos that I've watched of you. You do talk about Nostradamus quite a bit. So what's your fascination with Nostradamus?
Well, he's an interesting fellow. I time traveled back to the year December 1540. And that's usually when I talk to him. I don't like to bother him too much, though, because he's a busy fellow. He's very accurate in his predictions and his abilities to look into the future. One of my favorite spirits recently has been George Washington, who I greatly admire. Both he and Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Robert F. Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, Benjamin Franklin, they were all very worried about the United States because some entities are trying to tear it down. And all the planets right now, Calvin, you probably don't realize this, but all the planets right now are in the same astrological formation as they were back in the period between 1776 and 1805, when both the American Revolution and the French Revolution occurred and Napoleon tried to conquer the world, the then world in Europe. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that all the planets are in the same astrological formation as they are back then. And unless things turn around in this country and fast, there's about a 35% chance of a second American Revolution starting this March.
This coming March.
Coming March, 2023, mid-March. Well, did you know, for example, that Biden in Congress has given $100 billion to the Ukraine, to the point where if you're in the National Guard anywhere in the United States this month, you're not going to get paid because they don't have enough money to pay you. Mm-hmm. And next month, that's going to start affecting the U.S. Army and other military branches of the United States. So our soldiers will not be paid as a result of this inexcusable, insane stupidity that the American people are allowing to happen to fight to fight for basically a bunch of Nazis. There's Nazi battalions within the Ukraine left over from World War II, and all they're doing there is defending biolabs set up by this government, this corrupt U.S. government, and adrenochrome factories and centers for sex trafficking of young women and little boys and girls. I find it repulsive.
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure. I haven't done a ton of looking into that type of stuff. Just off the top of my head, maybe this is me just talking straight out my ass, but maybe it just has something to do with the fact that Russia is invading Ukraine, and so the U.S. is helping out with that whole thing over there. But regardless,
yeah, but that's
I don't have much to say about that.
George Washington has told me that. So they're all quite concerned about the developments here. We could go a lot of different ways. They hope it doesn't turn violent.
So let me ask you this while we're on the topic of George Washington. So you say that George Washington is saying things to you, and you're able to kind of I guess
there's no such thing as death.
Sorry, go ahead.
There's no such thing as death. Your physical body does die, but your soul lives on. And so when I speak to these individuals, Calvin, they are in a higher dimension, very much alive in the fourth, fifth, sixth dimension.
Right.
But they don't have a body in the third. Does that make sense? That's what I do.
I mean, kind of not really, because it's I get that you I totally believe that you believe you can speak to these people and these other things, but I don't see I'm just being honest, I don't see a reason for me to believe what you're saying. Is there
you're welcome to believe whatever you want, so that's the free will.
Yeah, I just I would love to be able to do what you're claiming to be able to do. That would be something. Let me ask you this: can anybody do what you do?
Yeah, anybody can if they have the willingness to learn and are open to it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah. So
I know for some people it's a bit of a leap, but I've been doing it now for almost 3 decades.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it does sound like a leap. Let's be honest, but if you're able to present evidence and demonstrate that the stuff that you're channeling and reading is real, then I mean, I'm totally open to believing you, and I mean, I'll even root for you. I need to
only deal with the truth. I only deal in the truth. I like the truth.
Yeah, exactly, and that's good.
And so what they tell me from the higher dimensions, Calvin, is always true. Yeah, it's always true. So unlike third dimension, where you get a lot of lies and misstatements, just look at our government, bunch of liars.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess, is there a way? You mentioned a soul a minute ago. What evidence do we have for a soul? Do you know what we have for a soul?
Actually, medical doctors have done some studies on it, and the soul weighs a couple of ounces. And what they've done is that they've actually weighed people's bodies before they die and right after they die. And there's a difference of about 2 ounces or so, ounce and a half to 2 ounces. And there's been pictures too, of people have taken infrared pictures of what it looks like a being leaving a person's body and going upward to the heavens. And if you want, I could try to find one for you. And my other book, this is my first book, Messages from the Masters, with messages from Albert Einstein, President Kennedy, Nostradamus. This book contained pictures of souls that I've taken, and their beams. They're often
that you have taken personally.
I've taken personally, yeah.
Okay.
So that's what this book is about. and it has the techniques in here about how to um, contact beings psychically, and the pictures are from those experiences. Yeah,
Gotcha.
both at Machu Picchu in South America and in Mount Shasta and different places around the world I've gone.
So, kind of jumping back to the Mount Shasta thing, since you brought it up again, could like anybody go? Is there because you know that person comes out and greets you, um, and your group, can just anybody go there and I guess meet this person, or is it kind of a special occasion type of thing? Like if I were to go there tomorrow, is there a way that I would be able to find the entrance to a hollow earth or find um this
Let me
character you're describing?
let me let me give you a little bit of background first.
Yeah.
There's been a war going on for the last at least 3 or 4 years at Mount Shasta between good and evil, light and dark, between the people of Telos and the Pleiadians and a group called the Reptilians, which are a nasty, very negatively oriented species that our government has been involved with illegally since
Mm-hmm.
1954.
Yeah.
And the Reptilians have been trying to take over Mount Shasta. And as a result of this war that's been going on, the Telosians and the Pleiadians, they have closed off the entrances to the Hollow Earth because they don't want these nasty types getting into there beneath the mountain. There are other places you can still see them at Shasta, but the main areas where I used to go to have all been shut down as a result. So if you were going to come out, get a hold of me. I could recommend some areas to go to, but the main areas I used to go to on the mountain have all been shut down now.
Okay.
And you'll feel it while you're there. When you're there, you'll feel like an empty feeling that there's nothing there, and there is nothing there because everything has been shut down for that,
Gotcha.
unfortunately.
Okay.
There are entities who tried to KIL me last summer when I was at Shasta,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and I know where they came from. But I was warned ahead of time, so I was able to escape being eliminated, and I'm here today to talk about it.
Good. Well, I'm glad that you're here.
Thank you, my friend.
So
There are negative entities out there who don't want this planet to ascend, who don't want us to be happy, who don't want us to live in harmony and peace.
okay.
And they want us to stop us at all costs from ascending, from creating a better, happier planet.
So let me ask you
That's
this.
who the war is with.
Why would a extraterrestrial super advanced species such as the Pleiadians, I mean, frankly, give two shits about us, us humans, and let alone the inner Earth civilization? Why would Pleiadians care about us, for example, and what we do? I guess.
You want a short answer or a long answer?
Surprise me.
Well,
Speedy
many
mystery.
people here on this planet are from the Pleiades. The
Yes, you
human
mentioned that earlier.
is a common species throughout this universe, very common. And many people came here 52,000 years ago when the Pleiadians were having a civil war, and they escaped from their constellation. Some came to Earth. I was among those that came to Earth, and to start a new colony here, and also to raise the consciousness of the people here so that everybody here on Earth would eventually ascend. Ascend meaning going into the higher dimensions, creating a planet based upon peace and love and harmony, and getting along with one another rather than war and conflict.
Okay.
And the Pleiadian, it's just like Star Trek, where there's a rule that says that there's the doctrine of free will and non-interference. You cannot interfere with a developing civilization.
Okay.
And this is because you cannot interfere with a developing civilization. They've left us to our own devices since that time. But there's been some criticism of that because uh, we've been on our own for a long time, but also we've been taken over by negativity. That's why we've had all these wars and conflict and everything here.
Hmm.
And so they do love us and care about us deeply. And so they've come back to help us now, as best as they can, but they cannot interfere with free will. But they've been trying to help us as much as they can in our own spiritual journey to make the right choices to ascend, to create a better planet. So I guess why, again, the reason why they've come back, I think it's safe to say, is that they're here to help us from a truly loving a base of love. It's like, um, when we sometimes help other people, help other nations in a good way. The US government is pretty bad. It's taken over by the cabal. I don't think they do anything for anyone in a good way, but that's what it comes from, a place of love to help us out so we don't destroy ourselves. So does that make sense?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense in a sense, I suppose.
Mhm.
I just don't understand why they wouldn't just. I feel like it would almost make a bigger impact on, I guess, the Earth and society if the extraterrestrial species would just, show themselves, pop up in like the middle of town square or
Well,
something,
they
or
they
Times Square or
would
something, right?
they would, but there's a lot of negative types, and especially our government is quite negative. And if they did, they would probably try to capture or kill them even.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, that is what would happen.
So it's like this, but the poor Sasquatch. The Sasquatch are out there, and I know some Sasquatch, and I've talked to Sasquatch. They're very loving, benevolent souls, beings, if you will. But the U.S. military in the past has tried to capture and kill Sasquatch as well, and study them, and they don't appreciate that. So they maintain their distance. Also, there's the cosmic law rule, like on Star Trek, where you cannot interfere with a developing civilization, and you have to respect people's free will. So they stay away. And the planet itself has been under quarantine for many, many, many millennia, to let us work out our own problems. But it's got to the point now with the advent of nuclear power, nuclear energy, that we can't destroy ourselves.
Oh yeah.
And so they're not going to let God's creation destroy itself. Did you know that the Pleiadians and other benevolent extraterrestrials, Calvin, shut down the launch sequence of nuclear weapons fired either by the United States against Russia or Russia against the United States more than a dozen times in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s before the Soviet Union collapsed?
I didn't know that.
They've
I mean,
intervened
I
many
know
times.
exactly what you're talking. I used to be really into that type of stuff. So I've definitely heard that before. It definitely rings a bell up there. Um, I just don't. I just don't know how anyone, would know that extraterrestrials, because how I look at it is like a UFO is different from extraterrestrial for me, because a UFO is unidentified, right? It's an unidentified flying. So if you say it's extraterrestrial, then you just identified it. So you can't
Right,
call it a UFO.
could be an IFO, Calvin.
Right. There you go. There you go. And
Forgive me. Let me turn off my stove. I've got lunch cooking.
yeah,
But
no worries.
keep talking. It's just over here. I'll
Yeah,
just.
go ahead. Um yeah, I don't know. I I personally don't see a reason to believe it, I guess you could say.
Uh-huh. Okay.
But I
Well,
understand where you're coming from.
just look up in the sky.
Oh yeah, I do that a lot. um you mentioned God and creation. Um just what we'll kind of touch on before we get off for today is just kind of touching on that subject for a minute. Is does this God that would have supposedly created everything, do you think that this God loves us, or it's
Very
interacting
benevolent.
with us, or is it a deistic type of God?
Wait, God is within all of us, Calvin.
How
God,
so?
it's within you right now. It's within me. It's within all of us. It really is.
but I don't know what that is. So I
God
don't
is
I
the
would love to believe that. I just need a reason to believe that.
the fact that you're here is the reason.
I mean, the fact the
You exist because of God, because God created everything. Now we're
that's
getting into philosophical questions
yeah.
now.
I just don't see a reason to think that, like I'm here because my parents had sex and then their
In the
parents had
third
sex.
dimension, that's third dimension, third dimension. I'm talking about fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, higher dimensions. In those dimensional realities, you're here because you were created along with everyone else by a benevolent supreme being called God, who created everything that there is.
And do you think that this God loves us?
Yes. And as Albert Einstein, who I do talk to frequently, there's a letter he wrote to his daughter Listral in 1955 called the bomb of love. And if he had done it all over again, he would have never created an atomic bomb that could destroy humanity. Instead of he would have created a bomb of love that would spread love and light throughout humanity and to create a peaceful and better world where people wouldn't be fighting and killing each other.
Interesting.
Yeah, you can read
Wow.
about it. It's on the web. Yeah, it's on the web. He told her, I don't know why he did this, Calvin, but he told her to keep the letter for 30 years. So he gave her the letter in 55. She kept it till 1985. She had since emigrated to Israel and she released it in 85. And it's a beautiful letter. It really is. And it's
Yeah.
something he did right. So
All right. Interesting.
yeah.
I
What I like about you is that you're searching for truth and looking for
mm,
answers.
exactly. Yeah.
And I am too, for that matter.
I stay on the fence. How I look at it as I don't again, I want to believe as many true things as few false things as possible. And until there's evidence to warrant believing in that thing, I don't see a reason to believe in that thing. So that's why I talk to, people, like you who supposedly talk to beings and people from the afterlife. And I talk to flat earthers and people who believe in God and Satan and that Atlanteans lived 1 million years ago and all kinds of different characters because I like to talk about this stuff. And I feel like it needs to be talked about. But
When I was back at Mount Shasta in 2018 or 19, I went to bed one night having blurry-eyed vision in one of my eyes.
mhm.
I talked to a Dammit that night. He said I could see crystal clear spiritually, but they asked me if I'd like to see crystal clear physically, and I said yes. Would you like to have your eyesight restored? And I said yes. So I woke up the next morning with crystal clear 2010 vision in both eyes. Now, that's pretty damn good proof that something happened and I wasn't dreaming anything. It was real in the third dimension. I've had a lot of things like that happen to me.
So I see, and then this is where my skepticism comes in, right? So
How
this is
would you
when I
like to go to sleep one night at Mount Shasta and wake up the next morning and you realized you didn't need your glasses
yeah.
anymore?
See, I
Throw
believe
them
that
away.
you have that you say you have 2010 vision or very very good vision that better than you had before. I believe that, but I unless I have like your medical records or something like that, there's no way for me to verify how good your eyesight was previously. So I don't that's when I would say I don't see a reason to believe that. I believe that you believe that, but
Okay.
it's
Well,
interesting. Yeah. That's
yeah.
just that's my skepticism. So
Right.
yeah.
Well,
But I had an awesome talk with you, Ted. I don't know about you, but I learned a lot about you. I've got a ton of work to do. I've got a lot of books to read. I wrote down a couple things that you said that I'm gonna have to look into a little bit further. But I do appreciate you coming on today, and I think I learned a lot about you and I guess more about what else is out there and Hollow Earth. I wasn't even aware that that was like really a thing until you said it, and then kind of a light bulb dinged in there. So that's
you,
something interesting. I'm gonna have to look into
you have a
also.
copy of my book, Messages from the Masters?
I don't, but it's on my wish list. It's on my
Well,
list.
I'll go up to the post office today or tomorrow and be happy to send you a copy.
Oh my goodness, Ted.
Great. Okay. So why don't you give me your mailing address and I'll send it
Yeah, I
out.
sure will. After the show, I'll be sure to give all that information to you. What I'll do is
Oh,
we'll go ahead
okay.
and we'll cut the show here. I appreciate you, Ted, for coming on. I had a great talk with you and I hope to have you on again because I think that there's a lot that we didn't even touch on, let alone when I read your book.
Well,
We're going to have a lot.
to be honest with you, Calvin, there's going to be things happening on this planet in the next 6 months. It's going to stretch and bend your vision of reality. So
Absolutely.
when that happens, call me anytime and we can talk about it.
Yeah, and you know what? Speaking of, in March, you know what? I'm gonna email you in March when you said that that stuff's gonna go down. I'm
Mid
gonna see
March.
what
That's
I'm
when the
gonna.
stuff's supposed to hit the fan. Mid
That's
March.
when stuff's gonna hit the fan. So that's
It
why I'm gonna be
could.
sending you an email.
They said there's a 35% chance. Not 100% certain, but it's a possibility.
Hey, that's it's pretty good chances. But all
We'll
right,
see.
Ted, I
I
appreciate you
hope
coming
it
on.
doesn't. I don't believe in violence. I never advocate violence, and I hope it doesn't happen. But the way the country is going in this direction, we're being pushed in some really bad ways. I mean, when the U.S. military can't get paid, um, we got a problem, Houston. There's something going on here. And when we don't have enough money to take care of our own country, and we're sending billions and billions and billions of dollars to a corrupt Nazi regime in the Ukraine to prop up adrenochrome factories and the trafficking of young women and men and little boys and girls, there's a problem here
Hmm.
by a president who wasn't even validly elected back in 2020, stole the election. So there's a problem.
There we go, folks. All right. With that, Ted, I
Can I
appreciate you
give
for
out
coming
my?
on. We're
Can
gonna
I
have to
give
have
out
you
my?
on again.
I'd love to come back. Would you like my website or?
Yeah, go ahead and plug anything and everything that you'd like.
All right. My website is www.outofthisworld1150.com. I have a mentoring program where I teach people how to talk to the other side. And if you're interested, you can go to my website, www.outofthisworldreadings.com. I go to Mount Shasta a couple times a year and I bring groups of people there as well as Sedona. I'll also be going to Peru and Machu Picchu sometime next year.
Ooh, very cool.
It's a beautiful place. I've had a lot of experiences there as well.
It's one of my dream vacations is to go to Machu Picchu. Oof,
Really?
I'd love.
There's a little town not far from Machu Picchu called Pisac in the Sacred Valley. And
Interesting.
it's a base where a lot of spacecraft from the Andromeda galaxy, and the Pleiadians, I think, land there too, but you actually see the ships coming down to land.
Interesting. All
So
right.
if
Well, everything
you want
everything
proof,
Ted
I
related
can
is
take you
going to
to a
be linked.
place where you can see the ships flying and landing off. I mean, what more do you want? So,
There you go. That's hey, what's better than physical proof? But with
yeah.
that, Ted, everything that Ted linked is going to be linked in the description of this podcast so that you can go and check out everything Ted Mahr related. And with that, Ted, thank you so much for coming on.
Okay, Calvin, send me your address. I'll be happy to send you my book.
Will do.
Okay, all right. Happy New Year, my friend.
Bye. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the final thoughts segment for the Ted Mahr interview. If you somehow haven't noticed already, look at my new webcam. Check out how high def I am. Obviously, for those listening, this means absolutely nothing, but check me out on YouTube and you'll see. So as you guys could probably tell, you could probably get a sense of what questions I exactly was quote unquote dancing around with Ted, as some of the prying questions that I had for Ted, he came off quite defensive with some of the questions. This in turn kind of made the interview a bit awkward in some parts from beginning to end, really. Now, I, of anyone, can understand being defensive about your deeply held belief, especially when a skeptic like myself is asking you such in depth and prying questions about that deeply held belief. What I don't understand is the hostility aspect of being asked those questions. And just being honest, he kept trying to bring up politics, everything from Biden to COVID-19, and I just wasn't having it. That's not what I talk about on my show, and that really wasn't why I wanted to have Ted on. So I really had to shut down his politics rant a couple of times if he couldn't tell. And being completely transparent for everybody, I did have to edit out a couple questions and answers from this interview by the request of Ted because he just didn't like the questions I was asking him. But that's enough about Ted himself. Let's talk about some of the claims that Ted made during the interview. And let's start off with the claim that he could speak to my deceased grandfather. So, first of all, he didn't really say or demonstrate anything compelling to me about my grandfather, let alone who exactly my grandfather is, what his name was, what he did for a living, anything of the sort to make me believe that he was actually talking to my grandfather, let alone my grandfather that I had literally no relationship with and never even really met. It'd be one thing if he asked me about my father's side, my father's dad, because I had a pretty close relationship with him when he passed away, but he was speaking of my mother's dad, who I had no relationship with. The only things that I really got out of that conversation was, quote, place your hand over your heart and ask your grandfather for help, which I did during the interview. I mean, I didn't verbally ask him for help, but I guess you could say I was mentally asking for help. But that's kind of where another problem comes up. Like, help with what? Finances, relationships, friends, mental health. What exactly is my deceased grandfather able to help me with? Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't be opposed to actually trying it and being very serious about trying this experiment, but I just don't understand what the extent of a literal ghost, a spirit, a not physical person could do in the physical world. But after a couple questions involving that topic, he quickly deflected into something else. Now let's look at some of the claims that Ted made during the interview involving death, souls, and the afterlife. Let's start off with the claim that when you die, your body loses weight or mass, and that mass that you lose is actually your soul leaving your body. Ted states that the soul is not a physical thing that you can perceive with your physical senses, i.e., touch, smell, sight, etc., etc. But if it's not a physical thing, then how does it affect your physical body weight? So if it isn't physical, how is it affecting your physical body weight? I just don't see the connection. And also, the weight loss can be explained in a couple different ways. The most probable explanation can be that the result of your muscles relaxing and your organs relieving themselves after you die. Obviously, that's going to cause some weight loss. So, with that, let's dive into the evidence for a soul. I really didn't get anything whatsoever as far as a evidence for the existence of a soul from Ted, except for, quote, there are photographs of what we believe are souls, unquote. But I don't believe that they're souls. I don't see a reason to believe that those things that you are photographing are souls. What reason do you have for me to believe that those are souls other than you just saying that? How can you demonstrate a soul other than an unexplained phenomena from a photograph? And lastly, let's dive into the good old claims of a hollow earth, a civilization within the hollow earth, and the entrance being covered up for a hollow earth. Flashback to David Weiss, am I right? I see absolutely no reason whatsoever to believe this claim at all, to be completely honest. I really tried to get some sort of corroboration of evidence or something from Ted to substantiate the claim, but that came up short. So, needless to say, my interview with Ted Mahr was an interesting and insightful one, I do have to say, even though Ted wasn't quite as open to questioning as he claimed to be through email. With the exception of having to be extremely careful with my choice of words and questioning, it was an insightful interview and I really did enjoy it. Ted was a very well spoken guest with a lot of ideas, a lot of claims to investigate, way more than we had time to break down in our little hour to hour and a half ordeal we had. But unfortunately, I don't see a reason to believe in most of the things that Ted claimed during the interview, let alone the things that we didn't even touch on during the interview. I await the arrival of Ted's book, Messages from the Masters, within the next few days, and I will continue to investigate Ted's claims of the supernatural and extraterrestrial, and hope to have Ted on again in the near future to talk about more of what he believes. But that's it for this episode of Unquestionable with Calvin Smith. I appreciate everybody for continuing to support my channel, my podcast altogether, my TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, everything. And speaking of that, you can find me on all streaming platforms and on YouTube, of course, where you're more than likely watching or listening to this. I just started getting this whole webcam thing set up, so hopefully I can do a lot more in-depth videos in the near future. If you're listening to the show over on Spotify, make sure to leave a review before clicking off. And if you're watching over on YouTube, make sure to click subscribe, like, and comment on the video before leaving. And don't forget to share the show with your friends. With that, I'll see you guys next time.